Welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. We're back with another Big Ten team preview here. We've got the UCLA Bruins. Before we do dive in to their outlook for this upcoming season, if you have been liking our content, please go ahead and like and subscribe. We do appreciate all the support. But taking a look now first at the UCLA offense, obviously they got one of, if not the best, transfer portal get in Donovan Dent coming over from New Mexico. A great orchestrator of the offense. A nice, great plug and play for them, heading into this year. But what do you see alongside Donovan Dent for strengths in this offense?
Yeah, I just see this as one of the more talented offenses that Mick Cronin's ever had. I would say, like, outside of that 2022-23 UCLA run with the offensive pieces that they had, I think this is probably the most talented team he's had, even like dating back to like his Cincinnati days. I think I'd say it's the third most talented team he's had, and retaining Tyler Bilodeau and Eric Daly is huge. But like you mentioned, grabbing arguably the best guard in the entire portal and Donovan Dent was just a massive get for a program that had pretty dicey guard play last year. I think he's going to be able to come in and be a stable presence at the very least. He does a lot of things extremely well, particularly in the open floor. I think he's one of the most explosive guards in the country and is probably the most creative rim scorer for a guard in the nation, or even that I've seen in some time. It's pretty ridiculous the things that he can do around the rim. And I do have some concerns. I'll get to that later, but some other pieces on this team, like Bilodeau, like I mentioned, like he's a guy that you can run offense through as well. He's an efficient mid and low post scorer. Was great in pick and pop last season, and he could be a short roll creator. It could be a nice pairing with Dent in the half court, and I think that's something that Dent might need within this half court offense. And Eric Daly, another efficient 3-level scorer. He can do it in multiple ways. He's a solid post up option at the 3. Can provide like a little bit of bully ball to this offense, and like I mentioned, can score at all 3 levels. And there's some solid off ball shooting on this roster again, and they're solid last year. But you retain Sky Clark, who, like, quite frankly, looked like a brand new player last year after his stints at Illinois and Louisville. Maybe that was coaching stuff at Louisville. He wasn't able to bring out the best in his game, but he shot it well last season and is better in a secondary role. And then you bring in a guy from UMKC that I really like personally, and Jamar Brown, who can slide right into an off ball shooting role. Shot at 40.6% from 3 last season and was in the 81st percentile in catch and shoot efficiency. When he doesn't have to put the ball on the deck consistently like he had to do at UMKC, I think he's going to be able to provide a lot of value. So I do like the talents on this roster. I think they fit well for the most part. And one final note is, Cronin teams usually take care of the ball at a high level, and I think there's enough handling and skill throughout this offense to kind of retain that strength.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think they are, like you said, they were a solid 3-point shooting team last year. Perimeter shooting 35.2%, 106 in the country. So in the top third, and I think that now this year, like you said, Jamar Brown is a good catch and shoot option. Sky Clark, we saw shoot it well. Daly, like you said. Bilodeau is a good shooter. Dent, low volume, but he's shown the ability to knock some down. So they should be able to shoot it well again. I think for me, like, on the weaknesses side, this is not a team that's going to get on the offensive glass very much at all. I mean, they've got basically Bilodeau and Daly and Booker, Xavier Booker, coming in from Michigan State, who are kind of their front court, I guess you could say. Like, Daly's more that like swing 3-4. But those two in Bilodeau and Booker are both like 6% offensive rebound rate guys. Not really a strength of theirs at all. So that's definitely a concern, especially when you're going to probably be taking more perimeter shots. Out of this group, like we said, better perimeter shooting team. So it'd be good to be on the offensive glass a little bit, but I don't really see that as being a strength for this team. Um, and then another thing, it's not really a weakness, more just kind of a concern. And we talked about this um, back in the transfer portal review with UCLA, and like Donovan Dent, more just like the Mick Cronin offensive style, right? Is like this slow paced, um, limit the possessions, play defense, whatever. And like Donovan Dent, of course, is one that like wants to push the tempo, right? And he's really, really good at that. Um, and so more so just a concern for me is like, are they going to be able to unlock his full potential, right? I don't know. Like he's best, in that faster paced, like transition style offense. But, you know, I guess one of my main concerns is the half court offense and how does that look, right? Dent having to slow it down and operate really in the half court where he's not like a prolific shooter, right? So that's an area I do have some worries with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my main concern. And I think it's actually like, it's not a like red flag, like sound the alarms, like this is going to like not work at all, because I think Dent's a great player. And I think Cronin should be smart enough to realize that he's got to let his horse go at times. But he's never really proven to do that throughout his coaching tenure. Cronin's fastest paced team at UCLA was 230th. He's had some guys that would probably prefer to play in the open floor. I mean, Tiger Campbell ended up being a really good guard here, but I think he's a guy that probably enjoyed to play in the open floor. He just wasn't really able to do that at UCLA. And Donovan Dent at New Mexico, the two teams that he was like the main operator for, 5th and 10th nationally in pace. So this is just a major contrast of styles that I am pretty worried about it on like a national scale. Like they're still going to be fine, but and like you mentioned, like I think Dent's game is far less suited for a half court setting due to his lack of a perimeter game. I think first off, like he knocked it down at low volume, but I don't really think he's ever comfortable as a catch and shoot option. Like he needs his time and space to get that shot off and shoot it efficiently. He's really not that great off the bounce as a shooter either. 13th percentile in effective field goal percentage, 13th percentile in effective field goal percentage off the bounce. And I mentioned he's a low volume 3-point shooter. And his effective field goal percentage in the half court compared to playing in transition is pretty stark, as it typically is. With like transition is just like you're going to score it more efficiently. It's just a matter of how often can you get out and run. But his effective field goal percentage in a half court setting was 45.5%. His effective field goal percentage in transition last year was 68%. So there's a real like stark just contrast and stark difference here. And he's a better playmaker in the open floor. He doesn't really, he's not like a high level passer when he's in the half court and not being able to, consistently, create advantages off the bounce. I still think he can do it in the half court, but ultimately it's going to be a little bit tougher for him. So yeah, I am worried about this. And just one more note before we move on to defense is Cronin's teams don't take good shots. Like the shot diet is typically pretty rough. It's very mid-range heavy. Cronin doesn't really care about the analytics on this end, which caps the offense's upside anyways. And then you have the Dent concerns. And I think could potentially bring up some red flags. And last season, UCLA was in the 98th percentile in mid-range field goal attempt percentage. And they retained a lot of the pieces that were involved in that. So I think it's pretty similar. They were 88th percentile in field goal percentage in this area. They also shot at 35% last season, but UCLA still finished 83rd nationally in effective field goal percentage, which means shot diet is a large issue here. And to cap it off, they were first percentile in rim rate. It's just not a team that generates rim attempts. They don't have like front court pieces that that can generate rim attempts. They're very mid range oriented, and Xavier Booker doesn't get to the rim either. He's going to play the five a lot. So maybe Dent can change the narrative here if Cronin can allow him to get out and run. If they can get in the top 150 in pace, all my concerns probably go off to the wayside. But until I see it, I don't love it right now.
Yeah, I mean, like even Bilodeau, right? He lives in that mid range, like in that elbow. You know, he'll post up, but it's more like more 10 or 12 feet away, and he's looking to hit like followaways. So definitely a team that lives in the mid range. Fortunately, they saw Dylan Andrews leave for Boise State. He lived in the mid range and felt like every game was 1 for 8, 2 for 9, 1 for 10. So maybe they see a little bit of improvement in that area this year, but who knows? Shifting gears now to the defensive side of the ball. You know, they really they lost to Daimara, right? Who didn't play a ton of minutes, but was a rim protector of some sorts. Of course, Bilodeau is not that. Brought in Xavier Booker to kind of mask that a little bit. But strengths wise on this end of the floor, what do you see?
Yeah, I'll keep it short here. I went on a little bit of a tangent with the offensive weaknesses, so I'll keep it a little bit brief here. But they're going to force turnovers at a super high rate. I mean, they were fifth nationally in turnover rate forced last season. It's, the high hedge and pick and roll and, the rim denial defense that's going to create a lot of these turnovers. They had really good personnel last season. It was kind of led by Kobe Johnson, and then, had some other pieces in like Sebastian Mack, and Andrews was fine on this side of the ball. William Kyle was a good system fit, but I think they have guys on this end that can uphold this style. Donovan Dent is a really good playmaker. Like, I don't love him as an on-ball defender, but his ability to make plays on the defensive end is something that's going to translate into a defense that is forced into rotation often, mostly because they force it themselves. And then I think Xavier Booker is a really good scheme fit here at the five. He's a great recovery defender and, a really good weak side rim protector. And, I think they can still rebound as a committee fine enough for, his defensive rebounding deficiencies to not really come about. So I think he's going to be pretty solid. I like Steven Jamerson as well as a, rim protector, rebounder. I think he's a nice depth piece. Could ultimately start over Booker. That wouldn't shock me at all if, Cronin didn't like what he was seeing out of Booker, particularly on the offensive end, where I think he could go with probably a higher floor guy in Steven Jamerson. I really like Jamar Brown as a defender. I think he's super versatile. He probably ends up being their top perimeter defender on this roster. And then another underrated piece in Eric Daly, I think kind of rounds out a defense that I was never really all that worried about. Cronin always has good defenses, and, they're really good in transition denial, which I think is a real key. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really good group again.
Yeah, it should be, and they'll force turnovers, like you said. For me, I do agree. Like Xavier Booker is a great fit here. I think for me, it's more the defensive rebounding. Like I know you said they'll probably be fine. It is a concern for me, just kind of looking at raw numbers, right? Like Tyler Bilodeau is not a great defensive rebounder. Booker, definitely not. Eric Daly, he's fine. Jemerson, I think is like you said, I think he's going to have to play because like the depth of defensive rebounding on this roster is not staggering, right? Like Jemerson, 20% defensive rebound rate. He offers some rim protection as well. So I think he is going to play a role. He's going to have to, because I think this is a real area of concern. But I do think they did improve kind of as a whole in terms of like rim protection, bringing in Booker, bringing in Jemerson. Because if they were just going to roll into this season with like just one of those two with Bilodeau, like Bilodeau is not a rim protector at all. He's not a great defender, and so I think it would have been a little bit of a concern. We see his numbers, Bilodeau at 1.8% now for his career. So I think the defensive rebounding is definitely a concern for me, but I think like they're going to force a bunch of turnovers that I think it'll end up being fine.
I would agree. Like I'm never like overly concerned about a Mick Cronin defense. He's always been spectacular on this side since 2008. He's only finished outside the top 100 twice, and he's finished inside the top 10 like or finished inside the top 20 like 7 or 8 times. So I think they're ultimately going to be fine. He plays his style. He high edges pick and roll all the time. They emphasize getting back in transition. So they'll be fine in that regard. They weren't the greatest effective field goal percentage defense last season. And, you know, you have like a key reason for that with Tyler Villadell. Like he played a lot at the 5 last season, and he's just not really a 5 defensively, and he doesn't really move all that well in space. He's just overall just like kind of an outlier as a rather poor defender in this system. But ultimately, I think they have enough to be completely fine here. There's no real glaring concerns for me.
Yeah. Now looking at MVP X factor for this team, and then ceiling floor, touch on those things a little bit.
Yeah, it's Donovan Dent for me for MVP. Just one of the best players in the country, one of the best guards in the country. I have a problem with the fit, but ultimately, I think the talent's going to end up winning out. He's going to be just fine. Going to be one of the best guards in the country, honestly. And I made the X Factor. The Donovan Dent Mick Cronin pairing and like how they mesh throughout the entire season. There's going to be a lot of push pull, particularly early in the season. Dent's going to want to run anytime he gets the ball, as he did at New Mexico, and Cronin is going to have some times where he's going to want him to slow it down, and it's just not really Dent's style. And if he can ultimately learn how to play more in a half court setting, I think they'll be fine. But I do I have my concerns there. Ceiling floor, I think UCLA can finish top 3 in this league. As much concerns as I have on the offensive end, I think their defense creates a stable floor, and I think the talent ultimately can give them a solid offensive group. I think 9th in the Big Ten is in the realm of possibility if things go off the wayside from an offensive perspective. I think they're a tournament team, even at their floor. Could see them finishing as like a 9 seed.
Yeah, I'll start there first. I had them top 3 as well, and I said 8th at the floor. I think they're good enough. There's enough talent here. Donovan Dent's good enough. Bilodeau's a really good offensive player, of course, where they'll be fine. They'll make the tournament, I think. It's just a matter of where they'll fall. They could be, like I said, top 3, or they could be in that, like you said, middle of the pack seed, 8, 9, 10 maybe. So what were they last year? They were 7 or 10. They were in the 7-10, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. MVP, not too much more to add. I went Donovan Dent. I think he's one of the best gets in the portal. While there are questions around his fit, he's so dynamic of a player that he'll be fine. And then X Factor, I went with the bigs. Actually, I went with Xavier Booker and Steven Jamerson, just from a rim protection standpoint. And a defensive rebounding standpoint, they need to add that value to this defense. They're going to turn people over with the guard group. Can these guys hold it down on the back line and rebound the basketball? So I think that's going to contribute a lot to at least keeping their floor higher. So we'll see. One last thing, bold prediction for this UCLA team.
Yeah, I'll stick with the Donovan Dent theme here. I think he finishes with below a 47% effective field goal percentage this season. For all the concerns I mentioned, don't need to get into them again. He's just less efficient in a half court setting, and I'm afraid that Cronin's is going to be more stuck in his ways. So I do think less efficiency as a scorer is in store for Dent.
Yeah, I actually went with a Donovan Dent stat as well here. Fortunately, we weren't the same here on this one. I went with a 3-point stat. So he's taken 124 career threes. I predicted that he's going to take 100 this year. So he's going to almost double his three-point attempt output for his career in his final season here.
I can see that, because if he's going to play more in the half court, he's going to get to the rim less. He's going to need to find ways to score on the perimeter. That makes a ton of sense. It's just, can he knock him down or not?
Right. Yeah. So we'll see. UCLA should be a solid team again. With the talent they brought in. So we'll find out here in about a month. So we'll wrap things up. Thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.